Before I bring up our next speaker who will be presenting tonight's award, I just wanted to take 2 seconds to tell you about the award. It's called the Alain Award for Civic Responsibility. It's very fitting that we're presenting that award here tonight because Alain Daniels was a resident of the city of Camden. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but the reason that we named the award after Alain is that Alain returned. He was a Navy veteran, returned from the First Iraq War. And we had a mini call to service just to get things started. And a lot of people, they don't have the time to come out. They're busy and so on. Alain was working in a 7-Eleven daytime, going to Rutgers nighttime to become a teacher, had served his country in the war, and still found time to answer the call to service. And he presented a proposal of his own to the City Council of Camden to bring about a more ethical government, and it was adopted. And so it is very fitting that tonight's award is named the Alain Daniels Award. Now I have the pleasure of introducing the man who will present this award. His name is John Sheridan. You probably know him better than I do. He's the CEO of Cooper Health System. But more importantly, this is a man who's given service to this state for more than 40 years now. Former cabinet member in Governor Kane's administration, and I could give you the list of all of his services, but then you'd be here all night. So I'm just going to bring up John Sheridan.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
What a great crowd. What a great night for Camden. Mayor Red, I saw Senator Norcross, Assemblyman Fuentes, Assemblyman Wilson, honored guests. It is my pleasure to be with you tonight at the Call to Service Summit. I was trying to figure out why I was asked to present this, the Alain Daniels Civic Responsibility Award tonight. I finally figured it out. This event had to be bipartisan, and I was the only Republican they could find in the city limits. Kidding aside, my chairman says you're a Democrat, Sheridan. Kidding aside, I'm deeply honored to present the Alain Daniels Civic Responsibility Award this evening. There are few, if any, living New Jerseyans who exemplify civic responsibility as much as our awardee. He had a distinguished career in government at the local, state, and federal levels, culminating when he served as our governor from 1989 to 1993. Since leaving that office, he has continued to serve the people of New Jersey and the nation in so many ways, it would take literally minutes on to hours to describe that. But perhaps, and I think this is really significant, his most important contribution is that he hasn't walked away from public service after leaving office. He hasn't walked away from his civic responsibilities. He continues to display true civic responsibility every day. He shares his wisdom and knowledge as an articulate, well-reasoned commentator on the public policy issues that are so important to us all in New Jersey, and he does it in so many different ways. Would you please stand and join me in congratulating Governor Jim Florio on the receipt of this most prestigious award.
Thank you very much to all in attendance, and good evening to you. This is a very impressive crowd, and I certainly appreciate the award and what it represents. To the mayor and to all the distinguished guests, I couldn't think of a better place to receive this award than the city of Camden. The city of Camden is where I started, on the road that took me to a whole lot of other places. I live at 28th and Mickle in East Camden. And as a student, I served in my first sort of political elected office. I was elected as a neighborhood representative of East Camden to the old OEO, the Office of Economic Opportunity. Some of the older folks in the audience can remember the war on poverty. And that's how I became involved as a community organizer. And then as a student, a law student here at Rutgers, I was very much involved in some of the local politics. But I worked my way through law school as a night watchman at Woodrow Wilson High School. I worked from 6 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning, did my homework while I watched the school. So Camden is very meaningful to me. One of the things I can remember, and maybe some can remember this, there was an old armory that was torn down in Camden. 1968, Senator Robert Kennedy came to Camden and addressed many of us who were there, and inspired me to really think seriously about a career in public service. So Camden is very, very meaningful to me. I've always just instinctively felt very comfortable with the whole concept of participatory democracy, which is a fancy way of saying that our system of government doesn't work unless we all work at making it work. And that entails, at a minimum, involvement and information, knowledgeable involvement. And I'm obviously preaching a little bit here to the crowd because you're involved, you're here. And that's a very good commentary on all of your judgment. And in some of the breakout groups that will take place in a little while, you'll become more informed. You'll become more enlightened and acquire knowledge about the process of government, which is very important as well. And by the way, knowledge is power. And to the degree that you become knowledgeable substantively and about the process of government, you become an empowered citizen. I guess the only substantive comments that I'd make tonight are that we live in times that are extremely challenging. These are very interesting times and difficult times. There are times now that we're going through, there are changes that are occurring that are rapid, they're dramatic, and they're extremely complex. And that means that we have to cultivate some traits to deal with these unique times. One of which I would like just leave you with the thought that there's a need for intellectual courage, the ability to question, the ability to have an inquiring mind, the ability to question traditional wisdom, which sometimes is more about tradition than it is about wisdom. There's a need to start thinking about things in ways that we haven't thought in the past. Because many of the laws that we have, many of the policies we have, many of the programs, many of the agencies are from a different day. And they don't happen to comport with dealing with the facts on the grounds now in these very complicated, changing times. And as a result of that, nothing seems to work very well. What that calls upon all of us to do is to be in the forefront of that change that we need. We have to have change that is not just incremental change, change that's not just marginal change. We need some systemic change, transformational change. And that's easier said than done. I can tell you authoritatively, it is not easy to be on the cutting edge of things before one's time. There's a need for us to be able to be tough if we're going to go challenge the status quo. And that's what it entails. Because even when there's a need for change that is objectively observable by people, policies that are incorrect, there's always going to be somebody that's making money out of the incorrect system. I mean, think our energy policy. The oil companies, the coal companies, they're not out there clamoring for change. They're doing well under a deficient policy. So I guess what I'm suggesting to you is that I want to encourage you to become engaged in that way, willing to consider change, knowing full well, as we all do from our personal lives, our student lives, it's always easier to just go along. That's the easy thing to do. It's the thing that we can least afford to do right now. So I commend all of you for being part of a process of at least examining how to become more engaged, how to become more involved, how to be champions of change, how to become more knowledgeable, to have the power to affect change. And you're all commendably here. And my hope is that out of tonight, there'll be some who will aspire to leadership. They will be inspired enough to go and seek after leadership positions. And that doesn't mean everyone has to go out and run for political office. We can be leaders in our own lives, in our professions. If you're going to be a doctor, be not just a good doctor for your patients. Be a doctor who seeks after good healthcare policy. If you're going to be a teacher, be not just a teacher for your parents, for your students. Be a teacher who aspires to have good educational policy for all of our students. So I commend you for being here and for things that you've yet to do. And thank you very much for the award.